Lifestar, one of 8 planets in the solar system of Virus Prime. On this planet, there are countless stories unfolding, but I wish to share with you just a few tales from Lifestar. The tale of the Crimson Swordsman, it could be said, begins at 2 different points, for it is the case that this moniker was held by 2 different people. Both of these tales, however, end in the same place, somewhere known to outsiders simply as the Great Desert, or to the natives as Alram Diamat, which simultaneously means Eternal Sands and World Pillar. It is, as its names imply, a vast, prominent and inhospitable feature of Lifestar. So inhospitable is it that all but scant few civilizations are able to last very long. Not only do the inhabitants have to contend with the climate, but banditry is rife throughout the desert. Caravans who choose to traverse the desert are often set upon by these outlaws, or simply do not survive the journey, perhaps due to a lack of preparation, or that they were confronted by some grisly, starving creature. There is one name among the brigands of the desert that is known above all others, and that is the legend of the Crimson Swordsman. He was a man of great prowess, an Antimus warrior. Antimus warriors are tremendously skilled fighters, masters of one of 6 colour-coded disciplines of combat, though perhaps the legend of Antimus warriors is a story for another time. Regardless, the Crimson Swordsman was a sight to behold, his falchion glowing a deep, rich red as he charged into combat. Or so they say, as the original Crimson Swordsman didn't live long enough for anyone to find out much about him or even his name. It would just so happen that he and his bandit gang would eventually cross paths with a man in a far more desperate situation than themselves, who would all too gladly free the Crimson Swordsman's head from his shoulders. Our surroundings change drastically now as we travel to the sleepy little town of Krun, which sits in a valley dwarfed by the western frontier mountains. A vampire lord by the name of Dalskalan holds dominion here. His stony keep, built into the mountain, perched over the townsfolk like some great grey hawk eyeing up its next meal. Razvir was a thrall in service to this vampire lord. He had been turned, but could not become a full-fledged vampire until either his master had willed it so or had perished. Razvir hated his life of servitude and sought to escape, but knew that to anger one as powerful as his master would be a death sentence. He had, however, made a discovery in the form of a secret relic that Dalskalan possessed, known as the Sunkiller Ring. This ring would envelop the wearer in a dark mist, allowing someone such as a vampire to travel during the day without fear of the sun's light. And so, one morning at the crack of dawn, Razvir would pilfer this ring and flee for his life. He had a destination in mind, a place he knew his master would not follow, for nowhere on Lifestar does the sun beat down more relentlessly than the Great Desert. He would have to make his way south through the dense forests of the hinterland, where the local folklore told of all manner of terrifying creatures that haunted the woods. Razvir pressed on without fear. He was a creature of the night himself, after all. Over many days into weeks, he would cross from the hinterland into the lush fields of the Nedamar Plains, and finally, into the desert itself. He had heard tale of a small town, said to be at the very heart of the desert, so remote that very few opt to make the journey. Perhaps here he could start a new life, so long as nobody learned his true nature. The journey through the sands was not an easy one. Despite the fact that Razvir required no conventional sustenance, the occasional sandstorm would roll in, completely disorientating him or causing him to blunder into the lair of some less than friendly wildlife. Just when Razvir thought himself hopelessly lost, he would see a small group of people approaching. Despite keeping a low profile for most of his journey, he saw himself without many options left. He made contact with the group, but he soon came to realize that they were men of ill intent. At their head stood an armored man, falchion raised, ready to strike. Before they had time to think, however, Razvir had already struck. He shot past their leader, taking down 2 of his lackeys and relieving one of them of their scimitar. It was not long before only Razvir and the leader remained. For some time they matched each other's ferocity. But, as a mortal man, the bandit leader soon began to tire, and at last, Razvir cut him down. It was then that Razvir decided that this would be his escape. He would assume the identity of this fallen brigand and become the Crimson Swordsman. For years thereafter, he would terrorize Alram Diamant under this new title, until once again he would do battle with an Antimus warrior, but this time would be his undoing. And so, that is our first tale from Lifestar. The story of the Crimson Swordsman, or perhaps Razvir the Sun Killer. And as you can see here, we have a stat block for the Crimson Swordsman, kind of a high-leveled bandit leader or outlaw with a twist. An undead with some unique abilities. And also, the items, the sword and the Sunkiller ring itself that Razvir uses. Razvir's sword, the Bloodthirsty Falchion. Sort of a masterworked long sword, but also gains some temporary hit points on a critical hit. And the Sunkiller ring itself can freely summon dark fog, which lightly obscures you as well as blocking out the sun, and can be further commanded to summon darkness. The link for the homebrew article you can find in the description below, as well as a bunch more details. So, that's what I have for you. Hope you enjoyed the story, and hope you have fun with the homebrew. I'll catch you next time.